welcome to everyone who's just joined us. Great to have you here. So Chris and I have known each other, I'm going to say 6 years, 8 years, somewhere in there. They all get muddled together. Chris and I think one of our first encounters was that we exchanged books. I sent you mine and you sent me yours.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. You did.
And
And I still have it on my bookshelf.
and I still have yours. And I knew that I had found a kindred spirit, even though I'm not a Newfoundlander. I knew I had found a kindred spirit, somebody who really had that same outlook on what sales was about and how we should approach it. But something else happened in the meantime. So back in January, February, March, somewhere in there, Chris and myself and a colleague of ours, Carol Bartlett, decided to launch an online community that we called My Revenue Room. And the timing for launching that was proved to be really valuable for a lot of people because, of course, we had just started the pandemic. And we created this small but mighty community where we were able to get together a couple of times a week for a book club or a learning about the pandemic and what it meant to the economy, or a variety of different things that kept all of us really highly motivated during that difficult time. And I guess it wasn't a surprise to me, but I was delighted to discover that Chris is a natural motivator. He is naturally inspiring. He doesn't even have to try. So if you say to him, like, teach this, he might go, I don't know, I have to think about that. What kind, but if you just let him be himself, he is this amazingly inspirational human being. And I'm trying to get him, when all things COVID disappear, to just get on a plane and let people be inspired by him, because he's really meant a lot to me in that role. And one of the things I mentioned in My Revenue Room, we had a weekly book club. And one of the books that we read, I think I led this one, didn't I, Chris?
Yep.
Was Eat That Frog. And it made a big difference, especially in the time of COVID, where we really all had to sort of step back and figure out, okay, how are we going to keep growing our businesses? So this was really valuable. But then Chris arrived at the table with Gary Keller's book. My copy is yellow, The One Thing. And this has had a phenomenal impact on me, not just because of the book and the content of the book, but because of how Chris presents it and how dedicated he is to allowing himself and other people to have extraordinary results. And so that's why he's here today, not just because he's a good friend and a colleague and a kindred spirit, but because I really wanted everybody to benefit from his outlook on life, on optimism, on making things happen. So without much ado, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chris. He really believes that feeling good about sales is the foundation for success in business. I totally agree. So he turns business owners and new sales professionals into confident and effective sellers. And you're doing that in almost a one-on-one coaching situation right now, right?
One-on-one coaching, but I do bring together cohorts of people that I'm working with in a group format as a part of the value proposition. But yes, it's primarily a one-on-one scenario.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So he works with sales-minded entrepreneurs and leaders who, aren't scaling fast enough, and helps them figure it out, doing all kinds of things like automating their lead generation, leveraging their book of business so they're making more money, more meaning, having more fun.
Yeah.
And he is an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, a podcast host, and the author of the best-selling book, It's Time to Sell. So really highly recommend that if sales is part of your life, that you get your hands on that book. Chris, how do they get their hands on that book?
They can go to Amazon, chapters online, yeah, pretty well anywhere, and all the links are on my website, chrisspurvey.com.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And he's been profiled in lots of major media, including Forbes. And but what we really want to talk about today, because I've noticed in my work, and I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, we are approaching 1 year of pandemic land. And I think for some of us, it is getting more challenging to stay hopeful, to stay motivated, to stay inspired on our goals, especially when some of our goals have definitely definitely been impacted by where we are. So, what are you doing right now to stay motivated?
What I'm doing now is I'm doing nothing different than what I have been doing for quite some time. And, I guess maybe I'll preface this by the belief that at any given point in time, we have the ability to create quantum leaps in our lives. And a quantum leap is basically changing who we are and creating completely different results from what we have historically done. And I mean, if you go back in time, pandemics, recessions, depressions, there's always been examples of people who've created quantum leaps in these environments. So I guess an overarching question might be answer ourselves is, well, why is it if they can do it, if other people have done it, well, what's keeping us back from doing it? And I guess the reality of that is it's the 6 inches between our ears. It's all the programming that we bring right through from even before birth through our childhood and all the different experiences that we have that make us who we are and make all the good things about us and all the bad things about us. And I want to be just very clear. I say this, but I'm going through the same ups and downs as everybody else here. So I don't want to be a Pollyanna and just say it's easy. But I do believe that if we have things in our lives that center us and ground us in what it is we want to achieve and keep us focused on that, it's a wonderful time to create a quantum leap. And why not it be one of us, right? So what I guess I will say is there are 4 steps really to create a quantum leap in our lives. And the first step is we need to have an aiming point. So one of the things that this pandemic has done, I believe, is it's gotten a lot of us shaken, including me, shaken from our goals. What is the exact aiming point that we want in our lives to achieve? And so step number 1 is picking that aiming point, and it has to be something, it should be something that really excites us, gets us out of bed in the morning, and we have inside of us this self-motivation to go and make it happen. So pick an aiming point. And I think now if you don't have an aiming point and you're maybe using the pandemic as a crutch for not having an aiming point, I would suggest sit down and decide what it is you want. And I'm always a believer, and Mary Jane, stop me at any given point in time, because if you wind me up, I get excited here. But I I really
Well,
believe,
that's what I love about you, because
yeah,
you express that enthusiasm just right now. But I will interrupt you here just quickly.
sure.
So we're talking about, relentlessly pursuing your goal. So when you talk about aiming point and quantum leap, the aiming point is a particular goal. Would you have more than one of those, or you're talking about making sure that your primary goal is what gets you to jump out of bed in the morning?
So I'll say that we need to have a vision, and a vision is the multifaceted aspects of our lives. I have a core belief that there's no sense having a one-dimensional life, right? I mean, a one-dimensional life would be an obsession with money, an obsession with business and trying to prove yourself, and so on. We want to have a well-rounded life that includes family, includes freedom, it includes fulfillment, and doing things in our lives that are enjoyable, right? And health as well. And so I believe the aiming point is that vision. that we have for ourselves, which is getting out of bed in the morning, feeling good about ourselves, doing some exercises, and then getting in, doing business. One of the things that I've learned about success personally is that it's okay, and so that's the aiming point, right? The vision. Uh, but it's very hard to achieve the vision if you don't love the process of achieving the vision. Because I think there's a lot of people out there, including me at times, when the process to go about achieving the vision is not something that really makes us feel good. It doesn't, and this is where your work comes in, Mary Jane, is, if the vision, if you need to, if your vision, let's just say a part of your vision is to make $100,000. Well, what do you need to do to create the $100,000? Perhaps it's connect with two people in the morning and connect with two people in the afternoon. So what you want to do is you want to fall in love with the process of connecting with those two people in the morning, and the process of finding those two people, and the digging and the sleuthing and so on. So it's not just picking an aiming point. You need to fall in love with the process of going after the aiming point. Okay.
That's lovely. I don't think you've ever said that so succinctly before.
It's somewhat of, be frank, it's somewhat of a new nuance that I've only recently, it clicked for me, to be frank. Now for me, I guess, and the reason it hasn't clicked for me until now is I've kind of always been in love with the process of what I'm doing, and so on. But I will say in this last 6 months during the pandemic, maybe in particular, that there has been moments where I've lost my motivation, but I've still had the aiming point, I've still had the vision. But why have I lost motivation? It's because I'm doing stuff, and I'm sitting in my home more, which causes us to navel gaze, and we start to feel a little bit off, So, but the only way around it is to find a way to do it that we fall in love with, and it all starts with the image, the vision we have for how we do it, and so. Yeah. Thanks, Mary Jane, for recognizing that, because it is a nuance that I've added recently.
So when we so thanks, Linda. That's exactly how you feel about marketing too. And I know that you do. And so when we are feeling, I don't know, sluggish, for example, um, that could be a sign that there's part of our process
Yeah.
that we're no longer in love with and that we should change. Now, I think for you, one of the things you taught me was that idea of that morning moment or
Mhm.
morning moments
Yeah.
when you remind yourself of the vision. And that from that, are you then able to continually create a process that you love?
Yeah, yeah, great question. And maybe I'll just add now this. So, first step in a quantum leap is pick an aiming point. Second step in
Yep.
a quantum leap is relentless pursuit, meaning every day doing something that moves us towards the aiming point. And maybe we'll come back to that throughout the conversation. But then the third step in a quantum leap is mind work. It is because, and it's because it's mind work is so important because the biggest critic in our lives is ourselves. We tell ourselves stories, and the second thing that happens when we feel a little bit of resistance in our lives is we start to self doubt, and we start to the inner voice. Oh, there it is. Mary Jane, you recommended this book to me, and it only came in the mail a couple of days ago. I can't wait to dive into it. Chatter, the voice in our head, why it matters, and how to harness it. I can tell you right now, this is going to be one of the best books I've ever read, because it is true. We are always constantly talking to ourselves. So when part of mind work is having some rituals in our lives, some routines in our lives that uh, get us get us on fire and driving towards the aiming point. And so I start my morning off every morning, 6 mornings a week, perhaps, where I sit in the recliner behind me, and I break out my journal, my pursuit journal, and I go through this journal. And in my journal, I have pictures that represent my goal, right? Represent me being, doing, and having the things that I want to create in my life. I also read my goal out loud to myself. And the other thing I do with my pictures is I actually take a few minutes and I trace around the edges of the picture. And I guess I've been doing this now 5 or 6 years to the point where I actually completely see and feel myself in the picture, right? I'm hearing the birds, I'm feeling the wind on my face. And so what that does for me is it inspires me. And what I find for me is it inspires me, and I get inspired to write down how. And so I'll write in my journal the actions I would like to take to move me towards my aiming point. And so all I do then is I look over my list. This is about a 12 or 15-minute ritual I do. I look over my list and just say, well, which one do I feel energized to do today? That's different. That gets me outside of my comfort zone. And it's been magical for me, that process. And that's, I think, that is the process for me that I believe has gotten me through and allowed me to make leaps in my life as I've moved along. And then the fourth step, maybe I'll throw this one in there. The fourth step in creating a quantum leap is tracking. We A goal that's not tracked, we never know. We never know what we're doing right. We never know what we're doing wrong. We never know how close we are to actually achieving the goal. So we got to write down the things. So I end my day with a ritual, which is writing down the things that I did that I can celebrate, and also a few things that didn't go quite as well. And my commitment to myself is every day doing more of what's working and less of what's not working. And this is where a fundamental concept of 80-20 comes in that 20% of our efforts generate 80% of our results. It's a phenomenon that's been proven. And so if that's the case, a part of being successful is trying to just identify what are the 20% of the things that generate 80% of our results. And we won't know unless we're writing them down and tracking them. So that's the
That
last step
makes
in the quantum
sense.
leap, right? Yeah.
So, couple of things there. I mean, um, I've been around a long time, so certainly when I started tracking things, it was a pen and paper or pen and pencil exercise. Whereas today we have lots of tools that we can use to help us track things.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, in addition to your entries in the journal, are you using any particular tools, apps, anything
Yep.
like that to help you track?
Yeah, I mean, it's primarily the driver would be primarily writing it down. I write it down sometimes in my pursuit journal. I'm a big user of Evernote, so I have a folder in my Evernote which is a daily journal where I write down. I might type in there, and I'm probably doing that 70% of the time. I do also use a free app. It's called Windstreak. And so what I do every night before I go to bed is I visualize the upcoming day and the things that I'm going to be doing in that day. And I visualize the success, and I write down I entered the three things, the three wins I'm going to try to achieve the next day, that evening, right? And then what happens is I get a reminder in the morning that these are going to be my three wins, and I get a reminder in the evening to do the whole thing all over again. And
Very
I guess
nice.
the fundamental philosophy behind all this is that everything happens in our head first, and maybe a challenge to everybody listening: our outer world is a direct reflection of our inner world. So if there's things in your life that you're not happy with, you got to look inside first, because I guarantee you it's all rooted in your inner world.
So, which brings me to a question about moments in your own life when you have, I don't know, lost motivation or lost focus,
Yeah.
and how you got your groove back.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a similar question to I've been asked before. When have I ever failed? And I don't associate. I don't recognize the word failure. And all I can say around that is because of this routine and ritual. Um, if as I'm moving along, is if I feel that things are not going in the direction that the aiming point is I want towards my aiming point, I pivot. And I never arrive at a point where I do self-reflection and say, Chris, you're a failure. you failed at that, because I'm after burning past that failure. I just don't recognize it, right? And so I change my actions. And so, you know, so what I'll say is, in the morning I might feel off course, I might feel unmotivated, but I just snap out of it through the ritual. And so, um, yeah, I don't know what
So
else to
you've
say.
never let go of that ritual. How long have you been doing the ritual then, Chris?
6 years. When I got exposed to U Squared, it's a handbook written by Price Pritchett, and I learned this ritual through his literature, and I started doing it then. So that's around 6 years ago. Yeah, there you go.
There's the book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And in that 6 years, you haven't faltered? Like I often create a goal and I will falter. And then what I find is if I go 2 days without following through, then it's easy to just let it go for a longer period of time. So I guess that's what I'm wondering. Have
yeah.
you ever sort of let it go and had to really work to get it back, or you've been fairly dedicated to it?
I've been dedicated to the process and have not faltered
Okay.
on that. But there are aspects of my life that have been. There are aspects of my life where I haven't been on point around the aiming point, and I'll just throw this example out there. I'm a yo-yo on the scale, and I'm up again on the scale for this last. I got they call it the COVID-15. Well, I've got the COVID-25 on, and and so maybe 20. I don't know, COVID-20. So, but I'm recognizing that now, and I'm going to say I'll give everybody listening $100 if within 3 months I'm not down to where I was, because now my aiming, my more of my physical activity and things is coming back into my visualization process in the morning. So I guess I can say, to answer your question, I know I have my own inner gauges, and I just decide to focus on certain aspects, right? And this going, but you mentioned the one thing, the book. Um, one of the themes that I got out of that book was, to be hyper successful in a certain aspect of your life, you need to go all in on that aspect, and you need to be basically obsessive for a period of time to create the momentum and so on. So success is not a straight line, it's zigzags like this. So I know I'm about to enter a period of my life now again where for 3 or 4 months I'm going to go all in on exercise and eating right, and hopefully I'll create the habits that'll stick. But I'm not going to beat myself up if I add 5 or 10 more pounds in the year from now. I'll just go back and forth. I don't know. I'm just expressing my own philosophy with all of this
Yeah,
stuff.
I like
And
that.
one of the things we can't
Right?
do, we
There's
got to.
some human nature in that and some forgiveness in that
Absolutely,
which we need. Don
absolutely.
O'Connor's asking if you have a mentor to help with motivation and pivoting.
I have a mentor who I talk every week with, but the primary focus is on business and business growth. Um, what I'll say about mentorship for me personally is, I have a group of mentors, and those mentors are the books that I've read. That I have 4 or 5 books that I consider my Bibles in a couple of areas of my life. And I have conversations with the authors of these books in my own head, and I say to myself, well, what would Gary Keller do in this example, right? What would Napoleon Hill do in this example? Napoleon Hill is long dead. He wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. Bob Proctor is another one. So I don't know these people individually, but I know them through their books. And I can spend time visualizing myself having conversations with these people, and helping me make a decision.
That's great. And it's true. And you can see in the background of Chris there, the books on his shelf. And he's introduced me to many books that are amazing and introduced me to this idea of keeping those books nearby, not necessarily digesting them and putting them aside, but keeping them as companions in a
Yeah,
way, right? As you
exactly.
grow your business and as you're looking at your goals and um, need need to pivot perhaps, um, or again make sure that the process you're using you're in love with. I love that um, I love that statement.
Yeah.
Eileen is writing, who wrote U Squared? And that is Price Pritchett, right?
Price Pritchett, and he has a bundle. If you want, somehow I can. So I think for $130. Now I know, Mary Jane, you had a bit of a negative experience in getting it to Canada.
Well, it wasn't negative. It did arrive, but it
Yeah,
was at the beginning of COVID,
yeah, fair enough. So it took a
and it
while,
took
but
a long time for it to come through customs.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Like anyway, I'll just point that out. And so this little bundle, I can send a link to you, Mary Jane, if you want to send it. I send out the link. But for this bundle, I think it's $100 or something like that, maybe. But so it's U Squared, the Pursuit Journal, and Quantum Leap Strategy. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us here today, Chris.
Oh, you're welcome.
If you're not connected to Chris on LinkedIn, do that. And you have an occasional newsletter on LinkedIn that's highly inspirational.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I've
You
been
do though.
terribly
And I think
I
you're
do.
thinking of
Oh, I
reviving
definitely.
your,
Yeah.
you're going to revive your podcast?
Yeah, my podcast and my email newsletter. So if people go to chrisspurvey.com and subscribe to my newsletter, and I'm going to get back consistent with that. And for me, then my newsletter and my muses on LinkedIn. If you go there and read them, basically I sit down, I do just conscious stream of thought, and I share my ideas, and then I just publish them. So I got it's therapeutic for me, and it turns out it's therapeutic for some people who read them as well.
Absolutely. I love your newsletter.